The American Civil War was a defining moment in our nation's history. It tore the country apart. Brother fought against brother. The conflict lasted from 1861 to 1865. It claimed over 600,000 American lives. The war changed America forever. It ended slavery and reshaped our democracy. The Civil War still echoes today. We see its impact in our politics and culture. It influences how we view race and states' rights. Let's explore this pivotal chapter in our nation's story. The roots of the Civil War ran very deep. Slavery was the central and most contentious issue. The South's economy heavily depended on slave labor. The North was rapidly moving towards industrialization. As the country expanded westward, new conflicts arose. Should new states allow the practice of slavery? The Missouri Compromise of 1820 tried to maintain a balance. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 was the final spark. It set the stage for the inevitable coming conflict. The Civil War officially began on April 12, 1861, marking a pivotal moment in American history. This conflict would go on to shape the nation in ways that were unimaginable at the time. Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina, initiating the first shots of the war. The fort, located in Charleston Harbor, became a symbol of the brewing conflict between the North and the South. After 34 hours of relentless bombardment, the fort surrendered. This event signaled the start of a brutal and protracted conflict that would last for 4 long years. In response, President Abraham Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to put down the rebellion. This call to arms was met with a surge of patriotism in the North, as men from all walks of life enlisted to preserve the Union. Lincoln's call to arms prompted 4 more Southern states to secede, joining the Confederacy. This deepened the divide and set the stage for a full-scale war. The first major land battle of the Civil War came in July 1861, a few months after the conflict began. Both sides were eager to prove their strength and resolve. This battle, known as the First Battle of Bull Run, or Manassas, was a chaotic and bloody encounter. It shattered any illusions of a quick and easy victory for either side. The aftermath of the battle showed both sides that this would be a long, hard war. The high casualties and fierce fighting were a grim preview of the struggles to come. Early battles revealed the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. The Union had industrial might and a larger population, while the Confederacy had strong military leadership and a fierce determination to defend their way of life. The nation was shocked by the scale of the violence. The brutality of the early battles foreshadowed the immense human cost that the Civil War would exact on the country. 1863 marked a significant turning point in the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, a bold and transformative move that would alter the course of American history. This historic document declared that all slaves in the rebellious states were to be set free. It was a decisive action that changed the very nature of the war, shifting its focus from merely preserving the Union to a moral crusade against the institution of slavery. With the proclamation, the Union was now fighting not just to reunite the nation, but to end the inhumane practice of slavery. This monumental shift allowed African Americans to enlist in the Union Army, and by the end of the war, over 200,000 African American soldiers and sailors had served, contributing significantly to the Union's victory. The second major turning point came in July 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg. This 3-day battle was one of the bloodiest in American history, with immense casualties on both sides. However, the Union Army's decisive victory over General Robert E. Lee's Confederate forces marked a crucial shift in the war's momentum. Gettysburg is often seen as the war's turning point, not just for its military significance but also for its symbolic value. In November 1863, President Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address, a brief yet profound speech that redefined the war's purpose. He emphasized the principles of human equality and the need for a new birth of freedom, ensuring that the sacrifices made on the battlefield would lead to a more just and unified nation. The Civil War produced many notable leaders. On the Union side, Abraham Lincoln stood above all others. Ulysses S. Grant emerged as the North's most successful general. William Tecumseh Sherman was another important Union general. On the Confederate side, Jefferson Davis served as president. Robert E. Lee was the Confederacy's most famous general. Stonewall Jackson was another legendary Confederate general. These leaders shaped the course of the war. The Civil War affected every aspect of American life. In the North, the economy boomed. Women took on new roles during the war. They worked in factories and government offices. In the South, the situation was much worse. The Union blockade cut off vital supplies. Food shortages were common. The war also changed American culture. Newspapers brought news from the front lines. The war touched every family. African Americans played a crucial role in the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation opened the door for black soldiers. By war's end, around 180,000 African Americans had served in the Union Army. Despite challenges, black soldiers proved their bravery and skill in battle. African Americans also contributed to the war effort in other ways. Harriet Tubman served as a spy for the Union. Frederick Douglass used his powerful voice to recruit black soldiers. The war brought freedom to millions of enslaved people. The actions of African Americans during the war helped change attitudes about race. The Civil War was a turning point in military technology. New weapons and tactics changed the nature of combat. The rifle replaced the smoothbore musket as the primary infantry weapon. Artillery also improved dramatically. Naval warfare changed forever with the introduction of ironclad ships. The battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack was revolutionary. Other technological advances included the telegraph and railroads. Photography allowed people to see the reality of battle for the first time. These innovations would shape warfare for decades to come. By 1864, the tide had turned decisively in favor of the Union. The Union forces had gained significant momentum, and their victories were becoming more frequent and impactful. General Sherman began his famous March to the Sea in November. This campaign was a bold and controversial move, aimed at breaking the Confederacy's will to continue fighting. His army cut a path of destruction through Georgia, targeting not just military targets but also infrastructure and civilian property. This scorched earth policy was intended to cripple the South's ability to sustain the war. Meanwhile, General Grant pursued a strategy of attrition against Lee's army in Virginia. Grant's relentless pressure and superior numbers gradually wore down the Confederate forces. The presidential election of 1864 was a crucial moment. The outcome would determine the future course of the war in the nation. Lincoln won a decisive victory, ensuring the war would be fought to its conclusion. His re-election was a mandate to continue the fight for the Union and the abolition of slavery. The end came in April 1865. After years of brutal conflict, the Union forces had finally gained the upper hand. Richmond fell to Union forces, signaling the collapse of the Confederate government. The capture of the Confederate capital was a symbolic and strategic victory. On April 9, 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. This moment marked the official end of the Civil War, as the remaining Confederate forces soon followed Lee's example. The long and bloody Civil War was finally over. The nation faced the daunting task of reconstruction and healing the deep wounds left by the conflict. The end of the war was a time of both relief and reflection, as the country looked towards a future of rebuilding and reconciliation. The Civil War left an indelible mark on American history. Over 600,000 soldiers died in the conflict. The South lay in ruins, its economy shattered. Slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment in 1865. The 14th and 15th Amendments followed, granting citizenship and voting rights to African Americans. The war transformed the United States in other ways. The federal government emerged much stronger. States' rights were weakened. The Civil War continues to fascinate Americans today. Understanding this pivotal conflict helps us understand ourselves as a nation.